Well, hello, dear friends. Welcome from an absolutely boiling hot UK. My friends and colleagues at work and at church all laugh at me. They say, "You meant to enjoy the heat. You're from Africa," but I didn't enjoy it then, and I'm finding it very difficult now. We've had temperatures up in the late 20s, 28, 29, 30, and next week we're just probably in for 31, I think, by Tuesday. And then mercifully, I think the weather's going to change, but it has been an extremely hot June. So if you live in the UK, my sympathies. I know that you love the sunshine, but enjoy it. It's really hot. Anyway, I'm going to do a quick video with you today just because the lights when I'm filming are quite hot, and I thought what I'd show you how to do is to make a nice little folded bird that you can use as either a dangle, a page topper on top of a tab, just something a bit fun and a bit decorative and a nice way to use up scraps. So what you're going to need for this is either some plain paper, and this is just a pad of pastel papers. You want the color to be on both sides, because when we fold we're going to find that some of the color will be on the reverse. You could also use a piece of coffee dyed paper. This was just a piece of paper that I had from work. It's got printing on one side and it's plain on the other. That's absolutely fine. Then I have these 3 pieces of paper that I've torn out of a Daphne's diary. There's always lovely pages at the back that you can use for your projects, and these have print on both sides, so I've been careful that the colors kind of match even though they are slightly different. So I've got the yellows more dominant there and the blues there, but I think when I'm doing a little bird that will come out quite nicely. And there I've got lighter and darker as well. So that's the next thing. We're going to need some stencils, and when you're choosing your stencils you would probably be wiser to go with something that has quite a fine design. So this one's got a whole lot of different numbers. This has got different fonts and some words, just text really. This I quite like the pattern of. I thought that could be quite interesting. That's more geometric if you wanted to do a really sort of pop art kind of bird. That's a sort of a mesh, but it still could be quite a nice sort of mottled type of pattern. This one I liked with the wavy streaks, if you could imagine that as a little bird flying away. I quite like this pattern. I know it's a wave pattern, but I quite like that. And then the bubbles I thought could just be quite fun, but I'm not going to do them all. I'll just do 1 or 2 of them. Then I'm going to use some of my little dye pads. So I've got some of this Aladdin dye in a whole lot of different colors. I've got a blue, a green, yellow, pink and an orange, and that will be my base layer. And then I'm going to do some text stamps over them, either using walnut stain or vintage photo, and then we'll develop the little bird as we go along. So let me clear my space here. So I've chosen a piece of pastel blue paper, and this is paper as opposed to card, and I'm going to start off with this lovely sort of circular design. Just kind of reminds me a little bit about shells, but I think once you see how we're going to cut the papers and things up, you'll see that it's going to create a different pattern. So let me start off with the yellow, because that's the lightest color, and then I'll build up. So I'm just going to use my little sponge to randomly apply some color. And remember that colors play with each other, so I've got blue underneath, and where I put yellow over it, it's likely to change it to a greeny color. Some lighter, some darker, depending on how much ink I put on. Right, so that will be enough for that one. And then I'm going to go in with a green. This is quite a lovely color, green. I like this very much. So I'm not doing wildly different colors. They're all going to be harmonious. So blue and yellow make green, and I'm going to work with the yellow, the green and the blue here. And then because my blue is my deeper color, I'm going to go in with this last. So I'm taking this from just being a plain ordinary piece of pastel colored card into something that's got a little bit of interest. And you can make this as light as or as dark as you like, and you can make it quite sort of traditional and plain, doing all one color, or you could do something wild and funky. So already you can see that those colors will be beautiful together. So here's the reveal, and that's rather nice. So I'm just going to repeat this design over the second half of the paper. There will be a slight overlap in pattern here. I'm not too worried about that, and we'll just let it play out because it's all going to be broken up. We're going to work with strips of paper rather than the whole sheet. So I'm just making sure that this edge is now off the card. I'm just applying some yellow. Maybe a bit more there, and then we'll do the green, and lastly the blue. I love the vintage vibes that we have with a lot of the junk journals, but I don't know, I've just felt this real need lately to have an injection of color with a bit of the vintage, so not totally wild and colorful, but you know, just to have a bit of color in amongst the vintage. Let's see how it works out. I could have been making a mistake. Right, and then lastly I'm going to go in with the blue. You can tape your stencils if you don't want to realign them like I'm having to do because I bumped mine, but I've done so much stenciling in my life I'm not really worried about it. Back home I had created a lovely range of stencils for my shop, which I designed and we used to manufacture. So I have loads of experience with stencils, and they are such lovely additions to any craft pile that we have. So there we go, that's a lovely variation of colors. It goes a little bit light, it goes a little bit dark. So let's try a different one, and I think I'm going to try this lovely wavy one, and I'm going to turn it at an angle just because that is the way I know my paper is going to flow. And I'm just going to do this with the blue. I've got a oh, maybe I might put a bit of yellow. Just let's see how we do with the blue, or maybe just blue and green. That could be nice. I'm not wanting to have my ink pads open for too long at the moment because of the heat, so just make sure you cover yours when you're working. Yeah, I think I'll put a little bit of green. I'll just keep this a very muted color range. One color sometimes is just not enough. Alright, and then I'm going to move this across, and if this is overlapping, all well and good. So I'll start with the green here. Sorry about the table wobbling, there's nothing I can do. One tries to get all one's filming set up perfect, but there are some things which just don't work, and because of the filming contraption I've got here, I actually bought a really nice table at IKEA. I must show you guys one day. It's very compact because I don't have a lot of space. It's got a bar overhead which I can hang my lights and things on, and I was able to buy some lovely IKEA hanging baskets to put on the side, so it works really well for me. But the problem that I do find is that when I'm having to do something like this, that it does move a little bit. Loving that sort of pattern there, really gorgeous. Right, make sure you go right up to the end of your paper. There you go. Isn't that lovely? Even if you were just going to use it as a background without actually making it into anything, it could be lovely to make up tags and other bits of ephemera with. Right, so I am now going to get this done on the other side because I need it to be on both sides, so I'll do it with my others as well, and then when it's completely done I will come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, there are a couple of things to bear in mind when you are doing the stenciling on both sides. I made a bit of a bloops, and I should have thought it through because I do know about this, but I think the heat got to me. This one I did fine. I stenciled just on both sides, so that's absolutely fine for use. This one, however, I didn't check the side where the sort of circular pattern was, and I went on that side and did this wavy pattern. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to see what happens when I come to work on that one. And then this was a piece of paper that was coffee dyed that I've just done some color on both sides. So my next step now is to take back the bright colorfulness on this, and I'm simply going to use a stencil that's got a whole lot of different kinds of writing on it, and I'm going to use my stamp pads, and I think I'm going to use for this one I think I'm going to use Vintage Photo because it's slightly softer. Just want to sort of push it back. The interesting thing about color is that whatever goes on last tends to be more dominant. So I don't know if you remember back, oh, when was it? Probably the 80s, when we were doing all these mad paint techniques on our walls. If you'd put a, say you'd sponged a color on, like a pink, and you didn't like it and you wanted it to be subdued, if you sponged a cream or a white or a pale yellow over it, it would have pushed the color back a little bit so that the cream would have shown up to be more dominant, or the white. And the same thing is happening here, is that I'm just putting this extra bit of color on just to subdue some of the very bright colors that I have already got there. I maybe think that's not dark enough. So I think I'm going to go then here for the walnut stain. If I can get it open. I'm just going to go over it. Yeah, that's probably going to be a better contrast. And I don't want it to be a solid color. I just really want to push back some of the sharpness of these bright colors. You could, if you don't have stencils which have script on them, you could quite easily just use your stamps. That would be absolutely fine. Okay, so let me hold that up to you. It's not very strong, but you can see that it's just muted some of the sections compared to that, which is actually quite bright. So let me just do this little section here, and I'll do the strip along the top. We'll put that across like that. And that's quite strong, so let's use that font there. Right, so it's just subdued it somewhat. I'm going to do the same on the back of this, and then I'm going to stick with the walnut stain, and I'm going to do all the others as well. So I have all my papers now which I've done. I've left the printed ones out, the Daphne's Diary magazine, plain, and these are the ones where I've used stencils and ink pads just to create a background. And now I'm going to cut them into strips of paper, a variety of widths and lengths. So some of them might be quite short like that if I was making a small little bird, and some of them will be a bit longer. So let me cut a few of these strips, and I'll come back and I'm going to show you how we do the fold and how we finish them off. So I have now trimmed some of my lovely papers into different strips, and I've trimmed down the length. So these thin ones are 1 centimeter wide, these are 1.5 centimeters wide, and these are 2 centimeters wide. And the reason why I've done them in different sizes is because obviously they'll make up different size birds. So let me show you how to do that now. Once you've cut your paper strips, the fun begins, and depending on the width of your different strips, you'll get different size birds. So this one that was 2 centimeters wide will make it, oh sorry, that was a 1.5, but this is a 2 centimeter wide one that will make quite a substantially large bird. And then this size little bird was made with the very thin one, which is 0.5 centimeters. So I'm going to show you here, just using the 1 centimeter strip, how we're going to make the little bird. You want to fold your strip in half so that you actually don't have too much paper dangling around, and then you're going to just gently snip this, or you could use your guillotine to do that. essentially what you're doing is going to tie a knot with the paper. It sounds weird, doesn't it? But that's what you're doing. So you're going to bring the two ends to the front, and then you're going to cross them over and fold the one end underneath. Now you want to have one end have a longer tail than the other. So once you've got it at this stage, look for the pretty side that you want to have as the head, and I think I'm going to make it that one. That will be the shorter one, strangely enough. And then you're just going to wiggle your paper until you pull it through quite nice and firmly. It's going to make a little bit of a V, like that. And then you can just squish it into place once you've got a nice V. And the head section, you're wanting just to make this a slightly rounded shape, and it doesn't have to be too perfect because you're going to change that. And then you're going to just trim down the tail area a little bit. You could do all sorts of things with the tails. You could feather them, you could cut them in different lengths, but I'm just going to cut a little V like that. So I've got that as my basis. This little angle, if you're doing something that's got quite bright funky paper like this one, you could leave it. It'll be a little bit more art deco. But if you wanted a more traditional bird, you can just simply round the base like that to give it a proper sort of body shape. And then you want to have something that's going to be a slight contrast to be the beak. So you want a little point that's going to stick out, and preferably in something that's going to contrast a little bit. I think I might use that. So I'm going to just use that little offcut as is, and I'm going to take my glue stick and put some glue onto the top side of that, and then glue it on the behind the head. So if I do that, I'm able to slide that underneath the head just to give me my little beak. I'm going to take a permanent black marker and make a little dot for an eye, and you could also, if you wished, use something like that, where I've used one of these little moving eyes to do a more realistic little bird, but that's entirely up to you. You just need a little marker of some sort. So there you've got your basic little bird made from a lovely little strip of paper, and it's a lovely way of using up different things. And just remember that this started off just as a little knot tied in the paper, choosing which side you want for the head. I quite like that nice dark one. This was the stamped paper that we did, and I've inked the edges, so I would cut down the tails a little bit on some of these. So that's your basic knot. So I'll show you some of the examples of different things I've done. This little one, I just put a brad or a split print through to the back here, and I've kind of feathered the tails. You can curl these over a pair of scissors if you wish. This one I just used a brad to secure it onto a strip, and I'll show you what the strip does with this particular card I've got here. So this would make a lovely journal card, and this card is simply a paint swatch. And I've put it onto a little sort of tab, and I've slid that in, so your bird would here cover the hole, and that would make a nice little journal spot. You could secure that at the back, or if you wanted to, you could make it something that would slide up and down and in and out. Those little ones, I've put a little eyelet in and used a bulb pin so that you could hang them as a dangle. This one I've simply glued onto a little tag that I made using some gesso and some distress spray stains. And then here is another little journal card that I have with a bulb pin, and I can simply just thread this through a little incision that I made to make this little swinging tag like that, so that that would lie on here. Quite nice that it's actually quite nice and loose. I need to pull this through just a little bit more. There we go. So that it can hang there quite easily, or you could hang it on a page, or just even glue it down. I actually did, when I was looking at this, think that it might be quite nice if I lost the bulb pin and just glued that, so I had a little bit of a quote underneath there, but that I quite like the circle where the beak was. And you could use your little birds just to go onto a page. Because you've got a folded over strip of paper here, you would be able to glue that on either side, which would add a decorative feature, or you could use it to tuck into a tuck spot, or simply glue them onto the front of a pocket or an envelope or a tag or a journal cover. So I hope that gives you some ideas of things that you can use. You've got all sorts of things you can decorate, nice colorful brads, you've got paper flowers, you've got split pins. Here I've used one of these little cabochons, which is just a half rounded shape with a pattern underneath it. You've got beads, you've got all sorts that you could decorate with. So just have some fun, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. Bye for now.